Good evening for those who are in Europe. Good morning, good day for those who are in US. Nice to see you on the first talk today. And I wish you a great day ahead, and also a great weekend. And don't forget, if you celebrate Halloween, don't forget to celebrate. So my name is Anastasiia, and I'm a security software engineer. And this talk will be a little bit complicated because it will be a security talk, a cryptography talk. Basically, my goal is to complain right now, because I will tell you a story about creating a library, about supporting a library, a cryptographic library for many languages and platforms. This is truly a horror story, because except for really nice things as thinking about API, it has a lot of tough things, like trying to build this library on all these platforms and trying to satisfy all these Apple, constantly changing requirements and new ARM 64 macOS architecture, Apple Silicon, yada. So if you're ready for this talk, please put a plus sign in the Zoom chat. We will use the Zoom chat. I will read your questions from this chat, but after my talk, okay? I will have this half an hour talk. I will share the slides, and after the talk, I will answer your questions. And even after the conference, I will be, after the time slot, I will be in a Slack channel. So if you won't be able to ask me right now, please use Slack channel or just ping me in Twitter. Okay, I see a lot of plus signs here. Yay! I am so excited that you're also excited for security talk. I really like it. I even see a huge plus sign. Thank you. Okay, let me share my screen. So, and as I'm switching to screen sharing, as usual, as like many of you who use Zoom know, I won't be able to see all these chat messages right now, okay? So I will make a talk, and then I will stop the recording, and then I will read your questions. So I encourage you to write questions, but give me some time, okay? So let's do this. The topic of my talk is maintain cryptographic library for 12 languages. And here you can find my Twitter nickname, and you can find the Slack channel where I will be and where I will engage in like chatting with you afterwards. However, after some time, I understood that it's actually not 12 languages. It's like 14 languages already, because this cryptographic library, THEMIS, the cryptographic library, is growing faster than I can see. As I mentioned previously, my name is Anastasiia, and my nickname is Vixentail, and I'm a security software engineer. Right now, I'm working in a company, Kozak Labs, and basically, this is a data security company. So my day-by-day work is related to cryptography, to security software. I help to create security software. I help other companies to make their software more secure. And I am super focused on applied cryptography, especially encryption, especially end-to-end encryption. And I really like to add end-to-end encryption into, typical applications. Okay, a few words about Kozak Labs, just because for you to understand my background, okay? So Kozak Labs is a data security company. We are vendors of security software, which means that we create software for data protection, and then other companies use our software inside their infrastructures to make sure that the data is encrypted and multiple layer protected and all the things. Typically, we work with, we are not mobile first company, no. We don't have our own iOS application, let's put it this way. But when we engage with other companies, we don't actually care what kind of infrastructure they have, what kind of systems they have, because cryptography should work everywhere. We also, except for like business things, we also do a lot of cryptographic research, especially in the areas of in a mix of applied cryptography and usable cryptography. Because, crypto is complicated, so it would be nice if if people will be able to encrypt the data, but to search through this data. And for example, one of our technologies is searchable encryption. It also would be nice to have data end-to-end encrypted, but still be able to collaborate on this data. That's again one of our technologies. This is all like open source with a lot of white papers, with a lot of scientific work. I can say that in crypto we trust, but in usable crypto. Okay. So today my story of like complaints of horror will be about this library, Themis library. This is a cryptographic library which is based on OpenSSL, Boring SSL, and every other SSL. And right now it supports, as I mentioned, 14 different languages and platforms. And I'm one of the maintainers of this library. I'm not the only one, of course, but I can say that among these 14s, I tried like writing code on most of them, I know 10 or 12. So languages shouldn't be a problem when you try to do cryptography, because cryptography is so much complicated than any other, than any normal languages. The idea behind Themis is that people use it as easy to use, hard to misuse cryptographic library, and especially people who don't know cryptography, right? Regular developers who don't want to understand cryptography, who just want to protect their data. And in most cases, Themis is used in mobile applications, in like e-commerce apps, fintech, for example, if you know, in Bear application, Bear is a note-taking app, and we build end-to-end encryption of user nodes in Bear. Or you might be familiar with AppSpectre. AppSpectre is a tool for mobile developers that allow remote debugging of your applications. So as a developer, you can install AppSpectre SDK into your application during debugging, debugging, beta testing, not for App Store, okay? Don't use AppSpectre as a spying tool, please. They have all these protections, but still, I really encourage you not to spy on users. So when you integrate AppSpectre to your application, you can see like remotely on your browser, on your desktop, what is going on with this application to read network traffic, etc., etc. And of course, as data from application is sensitive, AppSpectre uses end-to-end encryption to protect it, which is based on Themis. Again, as I mentioned, in cryptography, if you don't have PhD in crypto, you don't want really to know about all these ciphers, because there are a lot of ciphers. As a developer, when you think about security, you just want to solve your use cases really easy, to have data protected, to store data protected, to transmit data protected, to verify that data is protected, right? This should be super easy. And with this idea in mind, Themis was built trying to provide this super easy experience for developers. And we call it crypto system. So crypto system is a use case. Crypto system is something you want to achieve. Themis has like 4 crypto systems: to store data, to encrypt data for someone, like a message, send encrypted message to someone, then to encrypt a session between like 2 users, for example, and then to authenticate users, especially with zero-knowledge proof authentication. This is a type of authentication that doesn't leak the secret in the network. So each of these crypto systems has its own name, for example, secure cell for storage, and has certain cryptographic primitives, cryptographic ciphers under the hood. But for developers, we don't actually tell them a lot about cryptography under the hood. We try to hide this cryptography. We try to have secure by default options, so developers don't think. However, this simplification for developers costs really, really a lot for us as a maintainers. So talking about maintaining Themis. First of all, if you never tried to maintain a library, I suggest you do, because this is an experience full of fun and horror. So in Themis, for example, the library is like layered cake, right? So it has these layers. So one of the layers, the bottom layer, is the crypto backends. As a library, you don't want to implement your own crypto, even if you're a cryptographer. So Themis doesn't has its own implementation of ciphers. It uses implementation from other cryptographic libraries. For example, OpenSSL, Boring SSL, LibreSSL, Voitova SSL. For Go language, for example, we try to use a native Go cryptographic library. For iOS, we are looking on CryptoKit, thinking maybe to switch to CryptoKit for iOS. Then, so these are the sources of crypto primitives. The next layer is a Themis core. Basically, there's a programming code that uses these crypto primitives and then pushes like forward to the language wrapper. The language wrapper is the wrapper, and another is this a library, right? That uses that works as a user-friendly API, that provides user-friendly API for developers. Because as, for example, iOS developer, I don't want to call some C library in my code. I want to have nice Objective-C or Swift library. And I don't want even to think that there is something hidden, okay? Similar if I use Rust, I also wanna use Rust API and something that looks like Rust. So it makes a lot of sense. However, with all these languages comes a lot of responsibility, because the languages itself is half of the problem, but the platforms, the operating systems, that's a mess. So if you think about Linuxes, there are different flavors of Ubuntu, Debian, like different versions, and CPU architecture, right? There is also operating system CentOS, which is similar to Debian, but no. Of course, talking about macOS, different versions of macOS, and I don't want to even start to talk about Windows. For me, as iOS developer in the past, Windows looks like a hell of a mess. And of course, don't forget about mobile operating system as well, a lot of flavors of iOS and Android. So now, languages, platforms, that's a lot of things going on. Now, that was like a small introduction about Themis as a library, right? And now I will tell you more about the ideas behind and how, when we try to create user-friendly library, when we try to solve these use cases, where is the horror? Where is all the pain coming from? Let's start from boring crypto. Oh, I would really like to ask you a question right now, but I won't see the answers. So, if you have heard this term before, good for you. If you have not, the boring crypto is this idea. This is the term that was was used by Daniel Bernstein in 2015, like many years ago. The idea is that boring crypto is some kind of cryptography, which is super cool because it's boring. Okay, boring means good. Why? Because for developers, usage of this cryptography should be boring, because they should be able to easy to install this library, because it will simply work, because it won't need to be updated so often. It's just, you know, super boring experience. And of course, boring cryptography, it's something ideal. It's something not really real. It's just an idea, and many libraries try to, you know, to move to this direction. If you think about common crypto, if you ever tried using common crypto, and if you think about CryptoKit, comparing to common crypto, CryptoKit is a boring library because it's so much easier to use. Okay, so in Themis, we also like this idea of boring cryptography really a lot, and we try to make Themis as boring as possible. Other thing is no options. This is the idea that Bruce Schneier talks a lot. So don't give users options, because obviously they will try to misuse it, they will try to use them all. Just give them one single option. It just works, you know, Apple way, it just works. And which means for developers, which means like for vendors, make these choices for your users. Provide them with default options that will work for most of their use cases. Okay? If you ever tried using, for example, OpenSSL as cryptographic library, I feel you, because OpenSSL gives you so much choice and so much different options that you really need to Google how to use the library correctly, because there are so many ways. So why we are talking about this? Why it is important? The thing is with cryptographic libraries that a lot of bugs are coming not from libraries, but from developers who try to use them because of the options, because using cryptography is complicated. And I really like to show these numbers because most bugs, most security vulnerabilities with applications that use cryptographic libraries are coming not inside the libraries, they're coming from misusing the libraries. And here opens us a new question. And again, I would really like to see the answers, but how do you think if you make cryptographic tool, do you think it should be easy to use or it would be hard to misuse? What would be your priorities? Okay, can you please write it in the chat, and after a talk, I'm just curious. After a talk, I will look it through. Okay, so easy to use or hard to misuse? What is more important for cryptographic library? Okay, I see some numbers. Okay, I'm really curious. And while you're writing, okay, I see a lot of answers going there. Okay, sorry, I can't read them right now, but this is a tricky question because both of these things are super important for cryptographic software and especially for security software. Basically for any software, but especially for security software. What means actually like easy to use? Here on the screen, you could see the installation sequence, so the commands you need to run when you try to install OpenSSL. And of course, there is so many things to do. And of course, many developers, they won't use your library if they can't install it. That's an easy idea. However, I've seen so many libraries that have super tricky installation scenarios just because, just because making simple installation is complicated. And with this idea in mind, for Themis, for example, how it works in our case, we push Themis as a library for package managers for each of the platforms. So if you're using macOS, you can write brew install. If you're using like Ubuntu, you write apt get install. But of course, these for operating systems. For languages, if you are Node.js developer, you can write npm install. Okay, if you're using Cocoa Pods, you write just pod Themis. If you're using Carthage, you get the idea. And this installation should be as simple as possible. Again, otherwise users just won't install your library. At the same time, the installation is tricky because when we're talking about iOS, for example, luckily we have this Objective-C and Swift kind of operability, it kind of works. So for Themis, for example, we didn't create like a separate Swift wrapper yet. We just use the single like Objective-C wrapper, and it works right now. At the same time, for iOS, we have a lot of package managers, right? Cocoa Pods, Carthage, Swift Package Manager, and many developers still prefer to install libraries manually. So imagine now the iOS development world where you have Xcode updates with like Swift updates. You have iOS updates as a system. You have new devices coming. You have updates of package managers like new Cocoa Pod update that, I don't know, corrupt something. And then in our case, we also have this OpenSSL and boring SSL updates because we want to provide our users with latest cryptographic libraries. And with all these things going on, providing easy to use experience is complicated, especially for iOS. especially with all this, new Xcode, especially right now with Apple Silicon. Like literally, okay, we have this Xcode beta period, yeah. During the whole summer, we tried to use this Xcode beta, and it was working. But Xcode stable, when Xcode stable is out, we understood that it was not really working. We need to patch something. And now with Xcode stable, like Xcode 12.0.1, stable version, right? But Xcode 12.2 is a better version, and it works differently. And now we also need to patch something, and Apple Silicon, and all this cycle, and you can't be sure that it's working. Just because if you use Carthage, you know what I'm talking about all these workarounds related to ARM64 architecture. This is how we feel as a library maintainers in iOS world. And like, remember, among 14 platforms, iOS is only like one of them. But fortunately, other platforms are more stable. I don't know why, but we have really a lot of complaints and a lot of trouble with iOS. So that was about easy to use. Let's talk about hard to misuse. Because remember, in my opinion, hard to misuse is as important as easy to use. What it means? For cryptography, when you want to achieve something, when you, let's say, want to encrypt the data, there are different ways how to do this. If you think about different libraries you tried, again, with this example, with Common Crypto, for example, trying to encrypt something using Common Crypto was a little bit complicated, let's put it this way. Trying to encrypt something with CryptoKit, it's much easier because the API is easy. So the idea here, I call this a pain curve, right? Because when you use some tool, when you use some library that provides you a lot of options, you can tweak it in a different way. At the same time, you spend a lot of time like tweaking it and configuring it, right? But you can select other libraries that don't provide you a lot of options, like Box Solution, something that it works only in one way. You don't have a lot of options, you don't have a lot of customizations, you don't have a lot of freedom, but it might be much easier to use. However, it's limited to this use case, right? So it's like a trade-off. You select better usability or you select better flexibility. Examples. Common Crypto. This is how, if you still remember Objective-C, this is actually C here because Common Crypto is C library, right? So if you ever tried to use iOS to encrypt data using iOS and Common Crypto, this is how encryption function looks like, and it's just a piece of it because one function usually it's not enough. So many people created another libraries. This is like one of examples of other libraries that is used for iOS for encrypting data, which looks easier because it's Swift, because it's only 2 lines. But I really like this example. Can you spot mistakes here? I wish I read the chat. Okay. Pay attention. Do you see mistakes here? Okay, 3, 2, 1. I hope you do, because when you try to encrypt the data, you should not use this simple key, right? When you want to encrypt the data using iOS, you want to use strong, random, long, cryptographically strong key. Then what is IV? It's init vector. You don't want to use this as init vector. Again, for init vector, you want to use random, long string. But as a developer, how do you know these things? If you don't have PhD in crypto, how you should understand these things? This is what I called easy to misuse. Okay, because this is an example from this library, from the README, and if you just blindly copy paste it, you have at least 2 or 3 mistakes, like 2 mistakes and 1 misusing thing. For example, how we try to solve this in Themis, it just not, we tried not to provide users with options they don't know how to use. We don't provide IV, for example. In our case, API is super similar to CryptoKit. Well, technically saying Themis is 6 years old, CryptoKit is 1 year old, so CryptoKit API is similar to Themis. Okay, let's put it this way. Yeah, I'm just joking. So the idea is when you want to encrypt the data, all you need to do to get some symmetric key to have your encryption message, magic, and your data is encrypted. You don't need to think about IV, you don't need to think about IS mode, you don't need to think about how to generate cryptographically strong key. Because you're a developer, you don't know how to make this like right choices. You don't want to make mistakes in this. Of course, if you have like cryptographic PhD or if you understand what you're doing, that's fine. Okay, I'm not encouraging you, to use libraries if you understand what you're doing. I'm just saying that most mobile developers, they don't need to understand cryptography if they just want to protect their data. This is a question of which tools to use. Let's move further. With Themis, for example, what if you want to encrypt data with some passphrase? Obviously, passphrases are not good as encryption keys. However, in cryptography, we have KDF, key derivation function, something that would allow you to transform your passphrase to stronger key and to use it. So Themis provides you an API to encrypt the data using passphrase. Of course, it will be slower, much slower than using the API on the top with keys, just because key derivation functions, it's like functions that use a lot of rounds. So it will take your CPU some time to generate cryptographically strong key from your passphrase, but still, that's super easy to use, it's super easy API, you have 2 lines and you should be fine for like most cases. I won't give you an example of all these Themis APIs, right? Because it's not my goal to show you how Themis work. My goal is to explain the design and how much like effort library maintainers might put into creating something that is easy to use and hard to misuse. One of the ideas behind Themis is that API is similar across all these 14 platforms and languages. So if you create multi-platform application, for example, iOS, Android, and server-side on Python, you can use Themis across all your like platforms, and the API will be similar. Not like completely the same, but regarding every language, very similar. And let me wrap up. Of course, when you create something as a library, you want to test it really a lot. So for example, in Themis case, we have 35,000 lines as a source code, and we have 10 times more lines for tests. And when I say tests, I mean really a lot of tests, because everything should be automated, because test them all, because this is cryptography. I'm especially happy with integration tests and backwards compatibility tests, because we create software for like critical infrastructure, for power plants, and I really need to be sure that next version of Themis will be backward compatible with the previous one. Otherwise, I don't want to be responsible for power plant failure, So a lot of tests. We explain all the tools we use in this blog post on DevTool, with a lot of approaches how you can use, how you can create like automated security testing for your software, starting from simple unit tests for security issues and following like memory tests, using fuzzing, and so on. Of course, it should be automated. I really like automation, and I'm a super lazy developer. So in our case for Themis, we use all these CI/CD tools because we use each tool for everything. Again, 14 platforms, that's a lot of things to think about it. Next but not least, regarding security testing, especially when, obviously, I'm sure that you're familiar with security testing of your applications, but especially if you're creating some kind of, software that uses that works with sensitive data, Be sure to follow the crypto coding guidelines, be sure to do the audits, internal and external, and again, put a lot of tests. And unfortunately, the last bit here, that with all this work, it's still not enough. All these tests still not enough to to work with users, because users have complaints, because users open these issues in GitHub asking a lot of questions. So in Themis, we have a lot of docs, huge public docs that explain how it works for all these nice languages. However, users that see these docs, sometimes docs are enough, but sometimes users ask these questions, I don't want to read docs, I want to copy paste code. Okay, we say them, let's put into docs safe to copy paste code snippets. Right now you can copy paste code, but users say, I need to copy paste this code, but I don't understand how to use it inside my application. Okay, let's create example applications. And remember, I showed you numbers of number of lines for source coded and tests. So in Themis, we have 10 times more tests than source code, and we have how many times? 30 times more for examples than tests and source code. So really huge amount of example applications, because obviously we want to showcase all these cases. But still users will complain, come on, these are your examples are working, but my application doesn't work. Okay, user, we hear you. Here are example applications, like real applications, not just, stubs, but real apps that you can investigate, which are open source, and you can copy paste some parts into your unique application. But users still can complain, sorry, yeah, thank you, it works, but my own app doesn't work, what I'm doing wrong. Sorry, we don't have telepathic powers, so we created one more thing, a simulator, a website that as a user, if you use Themis, you can connect to the website and, for example, encrypt and decrypt your data. Because website uses Themis as well, so you can check if you're using Themis correctly. If you want to check, like secure cell or secure message, like encryption, session encryption, you can also connect to this simulator as a second party and check there's transport encryption with it. And maybe only on this case, the users will be finally happy, because they can do it themselves, they can work on the applications themselves and make sure that they have all they need to build their own app. Yeah, this is what it takes to create a library and to make sure that this library is easy to use, that it is hard to misuse, that developers are happy, that it works everywhere, that is understandable. Why I'm maybe the goal why I'm telling it to you, because as developers, when you use cool tools, when these tools work for you, right, it will allow you to move faster. It will allow you to focus on your product instead of trying to debug these tools, instead of spending time. So as a library maintainer, I'm happy to put extra efforts, because there are so many nice applications that use our library that I'm just happy to do it, and I see how much difference I can add into people's lives when they use cryptography. Yeah, that's it.